Hello and welcome to day 18 of 30 days of Photoshop. Today we're showing you everything you need to know about blending modes. They're so powerful, you're gonna love today's video. Hello and welcome back to 30 Days of Photoshop. My name is Aaron Nace and today we're focusing on blend modes. Now this is how you get two different images to blend together. You can do this based on the light information or the dark information or the color information. There's so many different blending modes to go over. You can cycle through them. We're gonna show you how to do that. But today we're gonna kind of focus on the main blending modes and how to use them to create your images and make them look beautiful. So we're starting off with an empty frame here in the background, and I want to put an image into this frame. So I've got this other sample image. By the way, you can follow along with today's video. It's totally free. Just click on the link right down below. You'll be able to download all these sample images. Okay, so we're going to take this bird.jpg image and just click and drag this right into Photoshop and hit enter. Fantastic. So you can see we got a background layer and we've got these birds. Now here are your blending modes. We have all of these: normal, dissolve, darken, multiply, la 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 la. Who's gonna memorize all these? You don't have to. Basically what I want to talk about is how they're all grouped together, and it's gonna help it make a lot more sense, okay? So here you have your normal group with normal and dissolve. Honestly, we almost never use dissolve, so just normal is how it always comes in. The next is your darken group, okay? So literally everything in this group just darkens how this layer interacts with the other layers. So darken, multiply, color burn, linear burn, darker color. This is all just darkening, okay? Next we have our lighten group, and this will lighten. You can see basically from our sample image, you can see here in the darken group how the dark areas of the image we're working on. Keep in mind this image of the birds, like these are the birds, right? The dark area is the birds, and on this layer the light area is the background, right? So in the darken group, it makes sense that the dark areas are going to be visible, right? Now if we go to our lighten group, the light areas become visible and you can't see the birds anymore. So this is our lighten area. There we go, and all these will be lighter. Now this next group, the overlay group, blends in light and dark and color and creates a unique mix between the three. So overlay, soft light, hard light, vivid, linear light, pin light, and hard mix. These are basically used for like coloring mostly, okay? Next we have our calculations: difference, exclusion, subtraction, and divide. These kind of are used for special effects, but honestly, for photo editing and things like that, we just really don't wind up using these blending modes that often, okay? And the last ones are a little off the screen. They're hue, saturation, and color. Let's just go ahead. I'm gonna double click over here because our blending modes, you can also get to them over here. I just wanna make sure because it's a long list. It goes off my screen recording. So here you can also see, let's bring this all the way up to the very top because it's a long list. Okay, here on the bottom, you also have hue, which will just change the color, your hue actually, like red, green, and blue, that's the hue. Your saturation, you can see it increases saturation, color, and luminosity. So we're gonna kind of talk through all of these today and show you their different examples and when to use each one. But basically, you're gonna be choosing if you want your light areas to be visible of this layer, or your dark areas, or you want to affect the color. So in our first example, we're gonna be using the dark areas, we're gonna be using multiply. And you might have guessed that because that's kind of what's already working. Now, what we wanna do is take this bird image, and I want it to just be visible inside of this frame. And you might think, okay, cool, I need to make a layer mask, I need to do all this stuff, I need to blend it in, we even have a shadow and things like that. But these birds, they're on a light colored background. So if I want this light colored background to disappear and the birds to be visible, that's when we're gonna be using our darken group, and multiply is kind of the most used. So let's go ahead, I'm gonna double click on here because we have our blend modes up here at the top, so I can just show you how all these work. But basically, the next point I want to bring up is that usually the top 1 or 2 blending modes of each section are the ones you actually use. Like here on the top, we use normal. That's how they come in by default, okay? The next group is your darken and multiply. 90% of the time you're using darken or multiply. Multiply is like a big one. We use multiply a lot, okay? Next we have our lighten group, and lighten and screen. These are the top 2 ones of this group. Like color dodge, linear dodge, lighter color, you just don't wind up using those that often, okay? Next we have overlay and soft light. Both of those get used, and these other ones down here don't get used that often. And then honestly, this whole difference, exclusion, subtraction, divide, we don't use that very often. And then hue and saturation, we use these a little bit more often. So it's usually the top 1 or 2 that we actually use. Okay, so for this, let's go ahead and hit cancel because I want to give you a couple more keyboard shortcuts, because it happens a lot of the times when you might, especially when you're learning Photoshop and you're not sure which blend mode you might want to use. Like, it's hard to keep all these memorized. There's a great keyboard shortcut that's going to help you cycle through these that honestly just really helps. Okay, so here's the keyboard shortcut, because you can literally click on your blending modes here and just hover over them and like you'll see that effect. But the keyboard shortcut that I love, first you go to your move tool. So hit V for your move tool. So make sure your move tool is selected, and then hold shift, and then you can use your plus and minus on your keyboard. So shift, plus, and minus, that's gonna cycle through all of these blending modes, and you can just kind of look at whatever works. Like, you know, in this case, multiply works really well. Don't even worry about it. Like, you don't have to know the right blending mode. It literally is whatever works for your image. But multiply, in this case, what you can see is that multiply makes your light areas invisible and it makes your dark areas visible. Now, I want to point out one thing. You probably already noticed this here, is that with this multiply, it's like, yeah, it made the birds visible, but you can still kind of see a little bit of the background, right? Like if I put this back on normal, you can see like, this isn't completely white back here, right? It has a little bit of yellow. And so if I put this on multiply, it's like, yeah, it did pretty good, but you can still see a little bit of this, okay? So what we're gonna do is, a lot of the time you wanna use a blending mode, and then you wanna combine that with like a levels adjustment. And by doing these two things, you can make, for instance, this background, which is, as you can see, not completely white, it has a little bit of yellow, you can actually make it completely white. And then in this case, because we are gonna be using a multiply blend mode, it's gonna disappear completely. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, this layer is already a smart object. Check it out right here. You can see we have a smart object icon. When you click and drag an image into an existing document in Photoshop, by default, it will be a smart object. If you don't already have this as a smart object, it's not a big deal. Simply go to filter and then down to convert for smart filters, and that'll turn it into a smart object, okay? Fantastic. So it's a smart object. Basically what I want to do is use a levels adjustment to make the background completely white. So let's go ahead and put this back to a normal layer so you can see just a totally normal image here. We're going to use a levels adjustment. So for this, you can go to image, down here to adjustments, and over to levels, okay? Or you can literally just hit Control or Command L. Either one will work. Okay, now this is cool. I love using levels for this purpose because levels actually has a black point, a midpoint, and a white point. So if you click on this white point and then like literally just click right here, it's gonna make sure that this basically becomes completely white, right? That's literally what it does. So your white eyedropper here, we clicked over here, now it's 100% white. I know that it's white. So all we have to do is hit OK. Again, because we had a smart object, I can turn this levels off and on at any time, okay? And I can double click and I can go in here and edit my levels at any time. So it's not a permanent, like, baked into this photograph. We can change those levels. Okay, so what we have here is these birds. They're on the levels. What we're gonna do is just change our blend mode. We're gonna go from normal down here now to multiply, and you're gonna see, I'm gonna turn these off and on, okay? And you're gonna see where we once had a frame, like a little bit of our background visible, like if I just turn this levels off, now we can still see it, right? It's not super visible, but we can see it. Now we turn this levels on, I made that background completely white, and that just makes it invisible. How cool is this? So now I'll just hit Control or Command T for transform. We'll just kind of scale this and I'll put it right in here. I wanna make this like, you know, looking good. And then because it's just set to a multiply blend mode, okay, which again is going to darken, okay? Multiply is in the darken group, okay? So it's gonna darken whatever we have. So even when you have a shadow or something like that, it's going to even darken shadow areas, okay? So it's gonna darken this area, but it's gonna kind of multiply. It's gonna add darkness onto this area. So if you have an existing shadow or whatever, this is just like the perfect way to do it. Look at this, like no matter where I put it, it's gonna kind of darken those areas, okay? You can put them over here, you can put it over there. I chose this image because it was on a very light colored background, so it's, you know, it's a perfect example of how to do it. But, you know, even this little shadow that exists right here, it's just going to add that and, you know, add that multiply effect. And then, you know, here you have like a super great composite that it's just relatively easy to do. I didn't even use a layer mask. Like I didn't define the corners here of this document and then, you know, use like a inner shadow or a drop shadow. Literally just multiply blend mode did the job for me. So this is one of the great uses of blend mode. So this is the multiply group, the darken group, if you want just the darks to show up. So in our next example, we're gonna do the opposite. We're gonna do our lighten group. So for the lighten group, we have a totally different example here. This is our subject. She looks really cool, but I have a couple of different layers that I want to put on here. I have this other layer here. This is just called a light leak. Okay, it's a lighting effect. I got this from a stock image website. I'm going to just click and drag this right here into my image. Now, in this case, you can see I looked for an image that was actually kind of the opposite. So you can see the light is on a black or a very dark background, whereas before with this frame, we had dark birds on a light background. Now we're gonna be using light objects on a dark background. Okay, so this is going to be our next blending mode. So from here, instead of using the darken group, which you could go to multiply if you wanted to, and you could like kind of try to see through your subject. That's cool. You can totally do this as well. Like there's nothing wrong with this. In fact, if I hit Control or Command T and I scale this way up, like, that's kind of cool. You can totally do this. You can have fun. But let's just hit undo here, make that a little bit smaller. What we were gonna be using is our lighten group. So lighten or screen, both of these will work really well. There's no right or wrong here with this, okay? It's literally whatever works. You can see color dodge, linear dodge, lighter color. Yes, they do similar things, but kind of what we were talking about earlier is you kind of just always wind up using either the first one or the second one. It just, these are usually just a little bit stronger. So lighten and screen, a lot of the times we're using screen. So let's go ahead and click on screen. Okay, now you can see we have basically a light leak here. Now, this is a very similar kind of idea as what we had before. I set this to a screen blend mode, which made the darks invisible and the lights visible, but you can still see the edge right here, right? And that's because this, in the original photograph, if I put it back to normal, it wasn't completely black. It was just like a really dark, dark blue. So I'm gonna put this back here and we're gonna put it on screen. And now I just need to make my darks darker. And how do we do that? Literally the exact same way that we did this for the bird image in the frame where we made the lights lighter. We're gonna use a levels adjustment, okay? So literally just click here on your layer. You can hit Control or Command L for levels, or you can go to Image, down here to Adjustments, and over to Levels. So there it is, either one. And now, remember earlier for the birds in the frame, we used our white point. Now we're gonna sample the black point, okay? So again, this is a screen blend mode, which makes black invisible and light areas visible. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make this darker, which will in turn make it invisible because we're a screen blend mode. So I'm grabbing this black eyedropper and we're gonna put it right there, and you're gonna see basically just made it completely invisible. And I can even take my black point and drag it up a little bit more, and that'll kind of enhance that. So I can turn this levels off and on at any point in time, but now you see the border completely disappears. And we're left literally with just this light leak effect that I can put wherever I want. How cool is this, right? I have this effect. I literally just do whatever I want with it. We can put it right over here. The other cool thing is if you have a light leaker effect like this, I always recommend just hit Control or Command J to duplicate it, and then you can hit Control or Command T for transform. Let's just flip that horizontally and vertically and hit enter. And now, you have one over here. Let's just flip that horizontally again. There we go. And now I have this light leak over here, and maybe you wanted to use it over there, okay? And you want to go in your levels and you want to adjust that even more, kind of bring your black point up and kind of adjust that a little bit more. So you have now what started off as just one light leak, on one side. Basically, I just flipped this thing, and you can use it in a couple different places. So I could put it up there, you could put it down there, bringing it into Finder. Let's hit undo. I can basically just put this wherever I want. I can hit Control or Command T. I can transform this larger or smaller if I want to, and just kind of put it in different places. That looks kind of cool. So I always recommend just kind of zoom out and kind of try to put these in a few different places and, kind of see the effects that you get. And there's no right or wrong. Also, by the way, I do want to mention this light leak here where we have this blue. If you didn't want that blue, you can just simply click on your layer and go to Image, down here to Adjustments, and over to Hue/Saturation, okay? Let's move this over here. And then I can just adjust my hue slider here and I can change this blue, right? Like it doesn't have to be that blue. I can just have it be this, orange, and I can adjust my saturation and I can adjust my lightness. Like I can do all these different things and I don't have to stick with that original blue. So I just want to kind of show you that. We'll hit OK on there and that looks pretty cool. Now I have one more example here and we're just going to go back into our Finder because I found this image of bokeh, which is just this like out of focus little dots. I'm going to click and drag this into our image here. There we go. Let's just do it again because it didn't work. Click and drag that right in. Are you not working? What are you not working for? Click and drag. Okay, well, if you ever find that clicking and dragging doesn't work, you can go to File and you can go down to, we're just going to go to Place Linked, and then we're going to go to our blending modes and our sample images, and then we're going to go to Screen and then bokeh. I'll just place that in there. Doing the long way. Okay, but hit Enter. So now you're going to see all these little bokeh dots. They're light on a dark background. So if I change this again from normal down here to a screen blend mode, now we have all these little bokeh lights. I can hit Control-Command-T for transform. I can scale that up. There we go. Let's just hit Control-Command-T and scale this up. Fantastic. So I have all these like little interesting bokeh lights that I can add in there. And I have all these different lighting effects that I can put on images, any image that you choose. Like, go to this hue saturation. Let's just go ahead and make this. I'm going to click on this colorize right over here, and we're going to adjust our saturation and make this a little bit more like, there we go, kind of fit with the colors of everything else, because we kind of had that blue, but now I want that little bit other color. So now I'm going to lower the opacity here as well. So this is like totally a cool effect, right? All of these different layers, all of these are set to screen blend mode. So we have this one that we put in there. Remember, it was blue, but I used both a hue saturation and levels to make it look like that, okay? And then this is a copy over here that we just put on the right-hand side, and then we have this bokeh right over here. And then now, why not? Let's just go to, we're gonna go to Layer, down here to New Adjustment Layer, and I'm gonna go to a gradient map and hit OK. Then here in the gradient map, let's just go over here, and I'm gonna choose, let's just choose like an orange right here, and just choose one of these. I don't know which one it's gonna be. By the way, if you choose a gradient map and it looks inverted for what it should look like, just click on this reverse icon. There we go. And then always with these gradient maps, they always come up way too strong. So you want to take your opacity and lower those down. Just click on the word opacity and click and drag this to the left. But these gradient maps are a fantastic way to color grade your image. They're just so easy and fun to use. There we go. And then you can click right here or to go to your properties window, and then you can just go through them. Like here I have my oranges. Like literally I can just click on each one of these different orange, and I'm just gonna get a slightly different color grade effect on my image. I just love these gradient maps. They're just so easy to do, honestly. It's just like, it's kind of a little bit of a no-brainer in my opinion. All right, let's go ahead and group all those and then turn that off or on. So that was screen blend mode. So you can see just how powerful blending modes can be. So in our last example, we're going to be showing you how to use two different photographs to adjust light and color of your images using soft light, color, and overlay. Okay, so here is our sample image. It looks really good. Now what I want to do, let's go to our Finder window. We're actually going to grab this color.jpg. Let's just click and drag that in and hit enter. And you're going to see it's basically just it's a windmill right now, but I like the color. I think it's really, really interesting. Now, if I just take this from normal blend mode and we set this to something like overlay or soft light, like, yes, it's cool, but you can totally just like see the windmill, and maybe there's some times that you want to do this effect, but all we have to do is give this image a blur, and you're going to be able to use this coloring to define the color of your photograph. So let's go ahead to this layer here, to the color layer. We're just going to go to filter. We're going to go to blur and over to Gaussian blur. And you can see all I have to do is give this a big Gaussian blur. Okay, it's a smart object, so I can just change this blur at any point in time, but it's just kind of blurs the details of this layer. And now let's hit Control-Command-T for transform and just kind of scale this up, and we can move it around, and I can use this to define like the color and light of my image. As I move this around, you can see, oh, like that is actually looking really cool. Let's hit Control or Command T to make this even larger. So if you like the color and light of, you know, one of your images, like you find an image that's online that you're like, ooh, that looks really cool, you can actually use it to actually edit a different image. Now we're gonna do the same thing. I have another photograph here, so Soft Light 02. Let's go ahead and bring this in. It's just like a night scene here. So we're gonna change this layer blend mode. Now we've done a lot of different blending modes. You can see like color dodge, all these kind of things like this. Like there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do here, but what I want to show you here, let's go back to soft light again. Let's hit Control or Command L for our levels, and I'm just going to make this a little bit brighter here, just like that. Okay, something like that looks pretty cool. And now let's just give this a blur again. Okay, so you can use like light and color information in these layers. Let's just go to Filter. We're going to go to Blur and a Gaussian blur, and then just give this a big Gaussian blur. And then don't forget, you can just make it bigger. So hit Control or Command T for transform, and this just scale this up. And then like literally I'm using the color and the light of this layer to kind of define the edit of my other photograph. And it just gives your images like such an interesting look and feel by bringing in all of these other colors. Like here, right around my subject looks good. Let's just go back to our levels just by double clicking on our levels. And here we can kind of like adjust all of this to see how this looks. There we go, let's hit OK. And then we have this other color that's just kind of like used. It's kind of creating almost like a film effect here, but notice how I'm using kind of like the light of this image to kind of show around where my subject's eyes are. So we're using the light to kind of draw attention to my subject. And then this layer is adding a little bit of color. So both of these layers, we can kind of like move around and have like the exact effect that we want. And also, by the way, let's say you like this effect, but you're not like, maybe this green isn't exactly what I want. You can go ahead and click on that layer, go to Image, Adjustments, and over here to Hue/Saturation. And then you can just edit the color. Just go to the Hue slider and you can edit this color to whatever you want. So if you like the light or the color of a different image, it's really, really easy to go in here and make an edit. And you can just turn all this stuff off and on. Like I'm literally turning off all of these features. Like you kind of would never think to just like use an image of like a, you know, billboard, something like this. But now it's actually editing the color and light of our image. So let's go through, we're gonna show you a couple more blend modes here because right now this is set to soft light. Let's double click right over here. Okay, we're gonna go here and we can see that right now it's set to soft light, but you can change this. We have all these different effects and you might find a different effect that you're like, you know, these ones kind of tend to look weird, but you might find like hue or saturation or color or luminosity. You might find some of these are actually interesting. Like you might like this hard light effect, but don't forget, if it's ever just too strong, you have an opacity slider. So you can adjust the opacity to make it something a little bit more suitable to your image. In this case, I think this soft light just looks really good. Soft light's a great effect, but you always have your opacity slider that you can just do all kinds of fun stuff with that. And I think this is just kind of like a fun way to kind of like mix up your editing a little bit and just like, why not use a different photograph to define light and color? Okay, here at the end, we're gonna go to adjustments. I am gonna throw a gradient map over top of everything because I think when we do a lot of color work in Photoshop, a gradient map is just kind of like the best way to harmonize all the colors at the very end. So with our gradient map, we're gonna go ahead and choose our gradients here. I don't really know which one I want. We're just gonna start with something like that. Now, if it looks inverted, like if it looks like a super spooky image like this does, just click right here on reverse. It's gonna look a lot more normal. Okay, and then here for the gradient map, we're just gonna take it or bring our opacity all the way down. Usually I like it to go like 10, 15, 20% or something like that. But let's go ahead and double click here. And now we can just kind of click through a few of our different colors and define, you know, I like these reds, kind of gives our image a little bit of a vintage look. If we go into our oranges, we can see we have a couple different looks here. But we're basically now using a few different layers. Ooh, this is kind of cool. I like that one actually. That one looks really cool, right? It's kind of like giving me like vintage vibes now. And I have almost like a film type of effect. Don't forget, you can take these layers and adjust your opacity. If they're too strong, simply just turn these layers off and on and work with your opacity. And there we go. How cool is that? like overall lighting effect, but it's not just the light, it's the color, right? Like I turn this on and you can see now I have kind of like a light streak and a color streak going through where my subject is. And we're able to do a lot of really cool editing just with a couple of blend modes. So I hope you can see just how powerful blend modes are. You can use them, of course, for real projects like putting a picture into a picture frame and things like that, but play with them, have a lot of fun. Use the color and light of different photographs and bring it all together to create these stunning results. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Stick around for tomorrow where we continue our 30 Days of Photoshop series. Thanks again. I'll learn you later. Bye, everyone.